All right, hold on, everyone.
Hello. My name is Kayla Kim Vodopek, she, her, hers. I also go by Kim Namjoon. Thank you all for joining us. I'm the executive director of CATA, the Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists. A short description of myself. I am a Korean woman. I have long black hair. I'm wearing black frame glasses. I have a blue and reddish scarf with a yellow long sweater, and my background is blurry. And I'm calling in from the land of the Lenape, also known as New Jersey, and I'm beyond excited to have all of you with us. We are so excited that Kata is celebrating our 20th year anniversary, and we're deeply grateful for this community and excited to reflect on how far we've come and to envision what we will build together in the years ahead. So, from White Oak to community gatherings, from our confest to our virtual programming, and now to like growing our team of staff and interns, like CASA's played such a vital role in legacy, resistance, and evolution. And together we honor our past and lead boldly into the future. But before we dive into our panel, I kind of want to take this moment to invite the rest of the amazing team to introduce themselves and give you more information about our 20th anniversary gatherings. Koch will not be here today without the support of these wonderful humans. So I'm going to pass it to Sarah to do a nice introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Machi-Haber. I use she, her pronouns, and I am CATA's member and engagement and programs director. And I'm calling in from Queens, which is the unceded territory of the Canarsie, the Mantinecock, and Munsee Lenape. And I'm going to pass it to Kevin to also say hello.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin, he, him pronouns. I'm calling in from Austin, Texas, the ancestral lands of the Yaqui, Apache, Comanche, and many other tribes. Super excited to serve as Katis Grants and Development Consultant to help raise funds for all of our amazing programming. Excited for tonight, too. Thanks, everyone.
Kayla will pass it back.
Thank you. And I also want to do a shout out because he's not here, but Jesse J. Hoon, thank you so much for creating the beautiful graphics for this year's celebration and bringing our vision to life. And also a special thank you to Hal Round for being a partner with us for all these Kata conversations and excited for all the other future conversations we're going to have. So I'm going to pass it to Stephanie, who is our 20th anniversary committee chair, as well as our now vice president of Kata, give you a little bit of an overview of this year's celebration.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Lau. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm calling in from the unceded lands of the Tongva people in East Los Angeles. I'm a co-founder and co-producing artistic leader of Artists at Play, a Los Angeles-based Asian American theater company. And as Kayla mentioned, I'm on the CATA board and the chair of the 20th Anniversary Planning Committee. As we were gathering to talk about what we wanted to kind of celebrate on for our 20th anniversary, we came to the theme of legacy, resistance, and evolution. And we have a mix of online discussions and in-person gatherings that honor our past, examine our present, and our dreams for the future. And the events are organized into four programmatic pillars that are spread out throughout the year. First, and this is what today's conversation is a part of, it's our conversations, which are panel discussions on a variety of topics that are free to anyone to attend and sit in on. We have our in-person gatherings communities, which are also open to all. And right now there are in-person events planned in the Twin Cities, Boston, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York City. And those events are spread out throughout the year. And then our members only events for CATA members are called Connects. And these are a way for our members to connect more deeply and more specifically on various topics impacting American theater. Those are the kind of three programmatic events that we're doing. And our fourth pillar, which we just announced over the weekend, is the Godfather Prize and the Playwrights Festival. There's more information that you can find on the Godfather Prize and Playwrights Festival on our website at cata.net. But I'd also like to introduce Roger Tang and Kevin Burns to share more about those two new events.
Hello there, folks. My name's Roger Tang. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm calling to you, coming from you from the lands of the Coast Salish people, otherwise known as the Puget Sound area in the state of Washington. I am also the secretary on the board of the Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists, and also occasionally called the Godfather of Asian American Theater. And this is one of the functions I am coming to here today. I think today's event is talking about the roots and the past and the base of CATA, but this particular announcement is looking to the future. We are moving. CATA is moving into becoming a more of a service organization, and the Godfather Prize, the National Asian American Theater Playwrights Festival, is very much a part of that service organization. Why the Godfather Prize and the Playwrights Festival? Well, Asian Americans are the fastest growing ethnic group in the U.S. Yet in cities like New York and Seattle, where we make up nearly a fifth of the population, we receive only 5% of theater roles. That's a big gap. Obviously, we're not getting help from the mainstream theater, so we're going to have to do it ourselves. More so, there are no prizes that exist to incentivize our artists. That we want to change as well. So we are establishing the Godfather Prize in Asian American playwrights to identify Asian American playwrights deserving of national recognition. This year, we will be having a National Asian American Playwrights Festival to focus on 8 finalists, and out of those finalists will be the winner of the Godfather Prize, which this year will be $1,000, and a stage reading of a fuller length work. How to become part of the Playwrights Festival, become one of those finalists? We have a site on our CATA website where you can submit a 10-minute play on our theme of legacy, evolution, legacy and evolution, and you submit your 10-minute play and art statement, and we will have 3 rounds of judging from initial screening to final to the next phase, and then are the 8 finalists, which will become part of the National Playwrights Festival, which will be occurring in November. Uh, Notice I said this year's prize is $1,000. Well, we tend to do better than that because we need to incentivize our artists. So we are establishing we will be establishing an endowment to take and we hope to take that to six figures to beef up that prize money and make it a real incentive for our artists. This year, I personally will be matching the first $30,000 that come in. And to talk more about that, I can about that fund, and for our other fundraising effort, I can hand you over to Kevin.
Hi again, everyone. Thanks, Roger. As we enter our 20th year, there's so much to celebrate, so much going on. We're launching new initiatives like the Godfather Prize. As Roger mentioned, he has stepped up in a tremendous way by not only founding this prize, but offering to match any donations toward the prize, dollar for dollar, up to $30,000. So we have links to those donation pages if you feel inclined to give to support that award for Asian American playwrights. You can give there. Additionally, as we again enter this 20th year, we have set a goal for ourselves to raise $20,000 to support all of our operations, all of our programs. We're here to serve you all. We love putting these programs together. None of this would be possible without you, but with donations, we're able to provide these free of charge. We're able to have pop-ups virtually, have regional gatherings through cities across the US, to have larger confests and convenings in alternate years. So as we plan for the future and even for this year, we have established that fundraising goal, and please do follow those links to give and support our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin and Roger. So why are we gathering? So this gathering today and conversation today is about honoring our origins while remaining accountable to the present. Now, kata has emerged because artists from our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Swana, Mena, and mixed race identities needed visibility, resources, and collective power in a field that has often erased and fragmented us. So today or tonight, depending on where you are in the world, we will honor leaders who built infrastructures, convened community, and took risks, often without guarantees or institutional support. So I am beyond honored to pass it to our board president, Leslie Ishii, who'll be facilitating today's conversation. Now, Leslie Ishii is a director, an arts educator, an advocate, a community builder, and Leslie is artistic director of Perseverance, as well as serves on the board of Kata. And Leslie spent decades nurturing storytelling, collaboration, and cross-community work in the arts, bringing a wealth of insight on building solidarity across so many communities of color. So I'm very thankful to be able to introduce Leslie.
Oh, thank you so much, Kayla, for that lovely introduction, and wonderful to hear of all of the 20th anniversary programming going on. I'm Leslie Ishii. As Kayla mentioned, I serve as the artistic director here at Perseverance Theater, and I am grateful, a grateful guest of the Tlingit here, zooming in from Tlingit of the Akwán and Takakwán peoples, and just grateful to be collaborating and building trust and relations with the Tlingit peoples and Alaska Natives of Alaska. I have black shoulder-length hair, Japanese American Yonsei, fourth generation. I am a descendant of great-grandparents, grandparents, and parents who were mass incarcerated during World War II in the U.S. concentration camps, and many of my relatives who were forcibly removed from the West Coast. And I utilize that legacy and my learnings to certainly promote healing justice and bring forth collective liberation and coalition building, solidarity building, as Kayla mentioned, for everyone's greater good. With that, I'm wearing a black sweater as well, and I have these really fun, cool earrings that I think are related to anime, an anime program. I thought they felt appropriate. So here we are today, as Kayla mentioned, why gather? As is Kata's 20th anniversary, certainly want to celebrate that. And we're looking back to the founding the legacy aspect of this programming, the founding of Kata. And I'm here to share that it didn't happen overnight. It happened in many phases. So as we kick off this aspect early in the 20th anniversary celebration, we will be featuring legacy leaders to recognize the legacy of our theaters. I want to first start with those who are no longer with us, the Asian American Theater Company. And it was founded in 1973 by Frank Chin and Melvin Escueta, among others. And Amelia Cachapero was my mentor at the American Conservatory Theater. And it was then when I learned that history that she was there present at the ethnic study strikes of San Francisco State University. And our theater, the oldest Asian American theater, was founded on the heels of that strike. So with the idea of social justice in mind, and their specific demands, including the establishment of 4 departments, American Indian Studies, American and Asian American Studies, Black Studies, La Raza Studies, within a College of Ethnic Studies. And this empowered and greatly influenced what we now know and call BIPOC communities, and to make sure students are seen and heard, and our histories, as mentioned earlier, are not erased, but continue to be vibrant learnings from our ancestors that we bring forward. So beautiful that the Asian American Theater Company was founded on the heels of that ethnic studies strike at San Francisco State. I come from, in one of the earliest Asian American theaters, also Northwest Asian American Theater. And it was first called the Asian Exclusion Act and was founded in 1974 by a group of Asian American students at the University of Washington. That its original name was the Theatrical Ensemble of Asians, or T. And it merged with the Asian Multimedia Center and renamed itself then the Asian Exclusion Act, and eventually under the leadership of B. Kirohara, who was my first artistic director eventually, she adopted finally the name Northwest Asian American Theater, and that was in 1981. And she named it that in order to, better reflect the regional scope and the ethnic focus. And I can share that I'm grateful that Roger Tang with Porkfield Productions is currently in residence at that space. And then we want to recognize East West Players, which is now the longest running professional BIPOC theater in the US, or as Native Indigenous call it, Turtle Island. And that was inspired and was created on the heels of the Watts riots in Los Angeles. And that was established in 1965 by Mako, Ray Creevy, all these names, Beulah Kuo, Soon-Tek Oh, James Hong, Pat Lee, June Kim, Guy Lee, and Yet Lok. And it originated as a place where Asian American actors could perform roles beyond the stereotypical caricatures that were being limited, in Hollywood. So it was beautiful to see Mako, as he served as the first artistic director there, working for decades to train and nurture several generations of playwrights and actors, as the other theaters did as well. But now, just to give you that little bit of context that really inspired our movement in the Asian American theater, that became our organization. I'll share that. I'll have each of our panelists come on. Please come on camera now. That'd be awesome. And they'll take just a moment to introduce themselves, and then we'll start to jump into the different phases of how Kata began. And know that our friends here will know that after a few minutes in each of those questions, I may move us forwards, because we do have a number of stages that establish what we know as Kata. So let us start out with them introducing themselves. Tim, can I call on Tim Dang to get us started?
Thanks, Leslie. Hello, everyone. Good evening. And well, actually, it's only 3:20 out here in Palm Springs, where I am currently based, but I lived in Los Angeles for the longest time, since the 1980s. And it's so surprising that when I think about the work that I've been involved with, I have now worked over 4 decades as a theater director and producer and an arts administrator, as well as a cultural diversity and equity advocate. I was the producing artistic director of East West Players for 23 years, from 1993 through 2016. And I have also served as an LA County Arts Commissioner for the County of Los Angeles, as well as taught at the USC School of Dramatic Arts and the AMDA College for the Performing Arts. And I am so happy to be asked to participate in this panel. It has been a while since I have been involved with Kata, and so I am also very interested in hearing the plans for Kata and its future and where we go from here. So thank you very much.
For being with us, Tim. Beautiful. Tisa, can I call on you to introduce yourself next?
Thank you. I'm not seeing myself on camera very fully. Maybe somebody can shift the, but I am Tisa Chang. I am the founding artistic director of Pan Asian Repertory Theater, now in our 49th milestone season. And we will celebrate our 50th anniversary in April 19th, 2027. Pan Asian is the first and oldest professional theater on Asian American theater in New York City on the East Coast. And I'm very proud that we collaborated with so many and worked with so many wonderful artists, such as Mia Katigbak, who then later founded NATCO, and of course, Jorge Otol and Ralph Pena, who founded Ma Yi. And Pan Asian has been invited to hotspots over the world, namely, and I'm very proud that our work has, I always say, tore down the Iron Curtain when we were invited to Soviet Union, and of course with the Cairo International Festival, Johannesburg Arts Festival, after Nelson Mandela became president. I feel that Pan Asian has really carried the artistic work to foreign shores, and namely, of course, Cuba. 2 trips to Cuba, Pan Asian toured in Havana with Rashomon. Again, building bridges. And building bridges is actually how we all met at White Oak, the 5 theater companies then at White Oak in 2005. And which spurred the talk, the gauge of Asian American artistic impact and scope and collaboration. And has been very important. Tim has been East West and Pan Asian and MOO in Minneapolis. We have really talked a lot about collaboration, which led to the first National Asian American Theater Festival in New York City. That is, and the 3 founding companies that incorporated it, of course, are Pan Asian, NATCO, and Ma Yi, and that is the legal beginnings, legal for that became Kata later.
Yes, we'll dig into some of that too. We'll dig into that in this conversation. Yes, beautiful.
Yeah. And there were there were biannual, every 2 years, a major festival in a different city. That was the goal. And so the 3 companies in New York in 2007. Then I think we went to Minneapolis with MOO hosted, and then to California, LA, which East West hosted, and then to, I think, Philadelphia. And Kata blossomed and became something even larger and even stronger. So just to wind up about Pan Asian is because Pan Asian has always purposefully chosen the name Pan Asian, all inclusive of Asia. Our stories, songs, music, celebration are all influenced by the root countries. And of course, now we have probably nurtured 3 generations of writers, actors, designers. And I'm personally very, very proud. And I guess I am probably the oldest sitting artistic director in the nation, 49 years. So
incredible. Congratulations, 49 years. That's amazing, Tisa. Thank you for being with us. Fantastic. I'd like to invite Rick Shiomi to introduce yourself, Rick.
Hello, everyone. My name's Rick Shiomi. I use the he, him pronouns. I got into Asian American theater as a playwright, working with Asian American Theater Company in San Francisco, and then ended up as one of the co-founders of Theater Mu in the early 1990s, and then was the artistic director there until 2014. Post that, I retired, joined another started another company, of course, Full Circle Theater, but last year stepped away from that. So I'm back at Mu as a board member, and sort of in some full circle way have come back to the original point of my career. And I continue to be as a playwright. I think I've retired from directing because it's too much work for me. And at this point, I'm just happy to be a part of this legacy project. So thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate your taking the time to be with us today. I'll pass it and invite Andrea Asaf to introduce yourself. Thank you, Andrea.
Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all and great to be here. And thanks and shout out to HowlRound as well for streaming us today. My name is Andrea Asaf. I'm the founding artistic director of Art to Action, based in Tampa, Florida, which is the ancestral and unceded lands of Tocobaga and Seminole peoples. And I welcome she, her, they pronouns. I'm an Arab American cisgender woman with short black hair, wearing a black black button down with a collar, and on a virtual background that shows our beloved Florida swamp behind the Art to Action studio. And it's always an honor to be in the conversation with Kata. And I was on the founding steering committee, which became part of the founding board, and we will talk about that history in a little bit. But I thank you for having me with y'all today.
Beautiful. So glad you were able to say yes. I know how busy you are. And thank you. I'd like to invite Stephanie Lau to please introduce yourself.
Hi, real quick, I'm an arts administrator based in Los Angeles. I started my career as an LA County arts intern at East West Players. Thought it was really fun and cool and just kind of stuck with it now for 25 years. I've worked at organizations like Center Theater Group, the Ford Amphitheater, and currently at the Latino Theater Company, which operates the Los Angeles Theater Company. Theater Center, I'm sorry, the Los Angeles Theater Center in downtown Los Angeles. So I'm really happy to be here because a big part of why I continue to do the work that I do was because of the opportunities that I had at East West Players, the introduction to all of these very much titans of Asian American theater at the start of my career. So I'm thrilled to just be able to continue the work, both with Artists at Play here in Los Angeles and as a member of the Kata board. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Steph. I know how busy you are as a committee chair for this 20th anniversary, as well as being back on our board. We're so grateful to have you back. So as I mentioned, we'll spend just about 5 minutes on each of these different headings, which are phases of how Kata, what we know now as Kata, came into being. And Steph, you mentioned it, Tisa, you mentioned it too, the White Oak convening. That was at the Theater Communications National Conference, yes? Steph, can you kick us off a bit? I know you know the different theaters. I think actually Tisa named them as well. And those in the space that want to contribute, let's just kind of uplift that history as that seed that got planted, yeah?
Yeah, I was the marketing director at the time at East West Players, and I attended on behalf of the organization. It was in 2003, and it was, I know for me personally, a really amazing and eye-opening opportunity to, like I said, meet a lot of these leaders, these founding leaders, these titans of our community. I met Rick for the first time there, and Tisa. I also met Mia Katigbot, who was the founder and artistic director of NotCo, Jorge Ortol, who was, I believe, the managing director of Mai. So it was a really kind of amazing time for me as someone who was new to theater and new to Asian American theater at the time to not only meet these founders of Asian American theater, but also it was a gathering of theaters of color. So I met leaders in who led Black theaters, Latino theaters, Native American theaters, I believe. So it was a really eye-opening time to kind of see what our field looked like in 2003 and the impact that theaters of color had been making in the industry.
Oh, thank you for that. And you mentioned too earlier that second generation was present as
And
well.
second generation, yeah, also a New York-based theater.
Awesome. And Rick, you were there too, yes?
Yeah, my main takeaway from it was I was just looking through my notes from that time, and one was how all, it was a really great opportunity for the representatives of these companies to share their experiences that sort of we didn't normally have, in a sense. And I felt like that was the beginning of a kind of shared experience idea, in a sense, I think. I'm not sure that anybody at that time was clearly thinking we were going to create something like Kata at the time, but it was that initial kind of impulse and understanding that we were sharing something together, and that together something might be better for us, rather than each of us individually struggling along, kind of thing. Tim
Mm.
or
And,
Tisa?
and you were, yeah, because you were all in different parts of the country, kind of isolated,
Right,
yeah. So
right.
that was the first time you brought each other together. Yeah, Tisa,
Uh,
what else would you share about
I
White Oak
I
specifically?
think the important for me, uh, it was the first time that we really talked about collaboration and solidarity and increasing the impact of Asian American artistry and social justice. I mean, our stories expand so many different genres, but underlying it, uh, the underneath core, I think social justice and just expanding our presence and participation, having a bigger role in American, all aspects of American life, and certainly in the arts industry. I think that's coming together was really what we we created out of that, and it started with the first national uh, Asian American Theater Festival in New York, but it really that started a spiral upwards. So now I'm so gratified to see how so many new companies and organizations and energy and fervor.
Yes. So that spiral, is that what started then the National Steering Committee into more planning? I know, Andrea, you mentioned being on that. Tim, I know you just came off of, got your mic on.
Right.
Anybody want to add? Please do. Please
So,
add.
this is what I remember, and it might be a little funny. And Stephanie, you can actually chime in. But I was not able to attend
Right.
White Oak, which is why Stephanie had represented us there. I think I was directing a show at the time, and so. But when Stephanie came back, she said, "Oh, because you weren't there, you were volunteered to do all these different things, and this is what we're going to do." And so this is what I heard. So Stephanie was there telling, "Okay, this is what we're going to do. East West is going to, host this, Asian American Theater Conference," and I'm like, "What? What do we?" So it kind of like came out of this idea. So just to tell people, never miss an event like this because you're going to get volunteered for a lot of things. So, but I don't know, Stephanie, is that how you remembered it?
Yeah, I do remember Tim having a conversation one time in the office about like you had mentioned that we should have a national gathering of some sort. But I think it was
Right.
just like an idea. Like I don't think there wasn't certainly the funding to do something like that at the time. But I think it was something that you talked about wanting to do. And I remember, yeah, going to White Oak and I think we were all sitting around after dinner And someone said, "What's Tim up to? What does he want to do?" And I said, "Oh, I think he wants to do like a conference or something." And everyone chimed in, was like, "Oh, that's a great idea." Yeah. And then, yeah, you got voluntold. East West Players got voluntold to host the conference. But I remember, being on staff at the time and the work that we put into producing that conference and the first conference in 2026. I mean, it was as someone who was, again, like, I was very new to the industry. I didn't study theater in college. I kind of ended up there after an internship. It was amazingly inspirational and galvanizing. And it really, I think, as a young person, made me see the foundation that had been built by all of you and the future and the possibilities of the field of the work that we could do and what it kind of meant to be able to come together, like Tisa said, in solidarity and community, right, to really uplift the work that we all did as individual artists and as theater companies.
Powerful. Oh, so that means send a representative. You inspired the generation on your staff that way. So beautiful. So let me just double check though. So Tim, you got voluntold. Steph kind of, you were there to be the messenger. I think we talked, was there an LA committee or a steering committee that then began as you moved towards some of those, ideations for a larger gathering? Yeah.
Let me just jump in and say, we go back to White Oak inspired the first National Asian American Theater Festival in New York. And not only did, at that time, Mayi, NATCO, Pan Asian were planning shows, but we got a grant. Pan Asian got a grant from JP Morgan. And we were really able to bring in, I know East West came out to do a show, Moo came out, Teada came out. So we were able to invite the national artists, and that was the whole spur to subsequent convenings and festivals that led to Kata.
Well, actually, before that happened, it is correct that there was a conference at East West Players in Los Angeles, because the festival, TISA, was in 2007, and the conference at East West was actually the year prior in 2006. And there was a national steering committee that was formed. I entered the process at the point at which there was a decision or an invitation for folks who were planning this idea of convening. After that seed had been planted at White Oak, there was a gathering at the National Performance Network annual meeting at NPN. And so several of us who were NPN members at that time, I was the artistic director of New World Theater, which was an NPN member. Also, Pangea World Theater was there. Asian Arts Initiative in Philadelphia, led by Gail Issa at the time, was there. And so several of us who were NPN members came together with several of the folks who had been at White Oak, and we started planning a larger convening and planning a national steering committee for what this could be, and asking the question, who's not at the table? And I think it's a really important moment. I want to lift up and name Roberta Uno, who was, of course, the founder of New World Theater, and at that time was already at the Ford Foundation, and supported this conversation about what do we mean by Asian American theater? Who's at the table? Who's not included? What are we? How do we make people feel included if we use this terminology? And so it was really important that Mina and Dipankar from Pangea World Theater were there, meaning South Asian American artists were represented. I was in the conversation as a Middle Easterner or Arab American artist. And I hope we can get into this conversation, because those conversations weren't always easy. We had to really wrestle with some ideas and history and what it meant to be talking about Asian America in the 21st century, in the middle of the Iraq War, in the middle of the war in Afghanistan, right? In the post 9/11 era. And I think one of the things that was important about that, because there was a lot of conversation about why was an Arab American person on this steering committee? And what did it mean if we were talking about Asian America and how that had been historically defined as primarily East Asia? And, you know, we were in that moment of active war. And I'm saying this because we are in that moment again, right now, right?
Yep.
And we had this conversation in LA on a panel at the very first conference. Tim and I were on that panel.
The Next Big Bang, is that?
At the Next Big Bang, yeah,
Right, right.
at East West. And Tim and I were on a panel, and the question came up, why would we include the Middle East in this conversation? And what we talked about was if the concept of Asian America as an identity construct was really born as a response to US military intervention and war in Asia, right? The bombing of Japan in World War II, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, that we were also in a moment in the 21st century of the US again intervening in what is West Asia and Central Asia with military conflict. And that there was a real historical moment we were in, that there was a reason for expanding the notion of who was included in the identity construct of Asian America, and what Asian American theater as a coalitional response could be in that moment. And as we are now in this moment again, with the US having just launched attacks in Iran, we have to, I think it's an important moment to recognize the extent to which we have included or not included Central Asia in the conversation, and why that is historically, right? And how we keep interrogating what does it mean to be Asian American now, and who is included, and how do we make sure everyone knows they're invited and included. And so it was really within that historical moment that the Next Big Bang, this idea of like a coalitional Asian America of, as the new, like Roger said earlier, the fastest growing demographic in the United States, right? As the next big bang of arts and culture, the next cultural renaissance. And that was largely the conversation in LA, and that sparked those first few conferences and festivals.
Thank you for that, Andrea. That's powerful and such important context to note here. So 2003 was White Oak, if I just recap. By 2006, you had the Next Big Bang. By 2000, this is so ambitious, you all. By 2007, you had that first National Asian American Theater Festival. That's what you're referring to, Tisa, in New York. Then it seems like in 2008, you went, I'm looking at my list here. You had another conference, right? That
To
was
Minneapolis, yes.
Twin Cities.
Right. So Moo had hosted.
Well, that was Moo and Pangea. I think
Yes.
together we were kind of the local companies that were doing as much hosting. And then as a part of that, we were talking about also the first kind of pre-conference, Muslim or
It was
Middle
actually
Eastern?
yeah, it was it was a South Asian
South Asian,
conference.
South Asian,
pre-conference.
yeah, a pre-conference kind of thing, which was a part of what was Andrew was talking about. But the question, one of the small questions I have, because I have no memory of it, is when did the steering committee actually come into existence? Did it come into existence when the two groups sort of joined together? That was the steering committee, or
So
was
that was
there a
in
steering committee
Miami.
prior?
So we were at the NPN conference in Miami, right? When that happened. And we should also uplift another name, which is Cheryl Ikamiya from the Doris Duke Foundation, that also inspired us in terms of including more people at the table, and how important that was, at this particular time for Asian America. Of course, as Tisa mentioned, funding is always so important, is that the nonprofit organizations, especially those organizations of color, really rely on foundation, dollars to survive. And I think that this particular invitation really opened up from both the Ford Foundation and from the Doris Duke Foundation in terms of creating this coalition of I don't know, Andrea, was it basically organizations? Was it because that's how they could fund us through organizations because they couldn't give money to individuals?
I
I
think, yeah, I do think that, Tisa is correct that the first fiscal sponsors of the conferences and festivals, well, of the festival specifically, were the New York theaters, and then of course East West was hosting both the 2006 The Next Big Bang conference, but then another conference in what year was that? Was 2009 or 10?
I think
I
it's
have
2011.
11, you're
11.
correct.
that was the first conference festival, I think, when you brought it together. It seemed like
Yeah,
you
so
yeah,
we did two festivals in New York, as a matter of fact,
right.
hosted by the three New York theaters. And then at that point, decided to conjoin this idea of conference and festival and what became the Kata Confest model, right? But we did begin as a coalition of organizations. And I think that that was important because we were all producing organizations. We were all people. We're all producers. We're all artistic directors who knew how to put on an event
Right,
and
right,
how
right.
to right. And there was something really important about that because we were co-producing these festivals and we were a working board and there was no staff in the beginning. There was really just all of us coming together to make it happen and make it part of our seasons and make it part of what each theater was committing time and resources and vision to together.
Yeah, and it seemed like your different regions where you are certainly could speak to your populations, your communities too. Like the Hmong community, Southwest Asian community in the Twin Cities. You mentioned, Rick, Shaping Our Voices, I think. Was that the title in 2000? I think it was
Yeah,
in 2000.
shaping our voice and vision,
Vision,
the
yeah.
title. And also, as a part of that, I remember going to like the McKnight Foundation and getting funding from them for that because that's a special. And then, fortunately for us, the Guthrie at that time was very generous to give us space, free, basically free space to host the event there because the Guthrie at that time was trying to create its own here we supporting the community kind of thing. So it was a kind of a good opportunity at that point. So there was opportunities for funding and support within that our community, which was very valuable to us.
I think
Mm,
it's also interesting to look when we look back at the history of the Confests. There was always a kind of conversation and exploration of um, what's kind of the cost benefit analysis of working with historically white institutions and when do we produce it ourselves and host it ourselves. So for example, when we had a confest at Asian Arts Initiative in Philadelphia, it was 100% in their building, and it was a very community centered, community owned space. And then we had other conferences where we were collaborating and hosted by the Guthrie or by Oregon Shakespeare Festival later. And all of those models have different challenges, right? In terms of, on the one hand, are organizations that are really owned and led by our community sometimes have less capacity or fewer spaces or challenges that are logistic. And then when we're partnering with PWIs or historically white institutions, we're also navigating how much that staff understands about our community and what their historical relationship is and whether our community feels welcome in that space or not. So I think that Kata has really learned a lot over the years about those different models and how to navigate all of the different possibilities. And I think as a national service organization, we have a lot to offer in that regard.
absolutely. I'll share. So 2009, we went back to New York for the festival. Then 2011, we mentioned, went back to Los Angeles to become that more conference festival combination. Then I think you all were figuring out in that space of time, I think every year is a little too much. I'm gathering and fundraising and all that as it was catching on. So we didn't have the next one until 2014, and that was the Philadelphia. And then at that point, that's when I started to come into the picture. Tim kind of recruited me because I was doing an assistantship in directing at Oregon Shakes. Well, maybe we could do it at Oregon Shakes because we had a great ally, to your point, Andrea, Sharifa Joka, who was running the FAIR program there, fellowships, assistantships, internships, and residencies program. And she said, oh, we got to have you all there. And that's when we said, well, Bill, you can't do Yellowface, so don't make us protest you. So he, to your point, he shaped his season to make sure he was, he was doing Art Equity's anti-racism training and really getting into what it means to operationalize what being equitable, inclusive, and more diverse and all that. And then, so that didn't happen to 2014. And then we were able to go another 2 years to 2016, and we were in Chicago.
No, OSF was 2016 and Chicago was
I'm sorry,
2018.
2016. That's right. Yes, Philadelphia, 2016. Then and that was the first one of the first pre-conferences for the MENA artists.
Yeah, I do want to mention that at the OSF Confest, there was a pre-conference for MENA and SWANA artists, and that really beautiful effort dovetailed with what was already happening in the field, which was that MENA and SWANA artists were starting to self-organize and to gather to get together with Kata, but also to vision what are the specific needs of our community, particularly in the post 9/11 era and in the context of war, and how can we serve those artists and uplift them better? And so in that process, that was one of the touch points that contributed to the development of what eventually became the Middle East North African Theater Makers Alliance, or MINATMA, which is now a national organization. And the history of Kata had very much to do with the development of MINATMA's history as well, for which we are grateful and always happy to still be working in collaboration with Kata.
I've never forgotten to Zeba Rahman was there to be the keynote speaker at that pre-conference. It was through the
quite brilliant keynote, actually.
Yeah, the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation Building Bridges Initiative. Yes, beautiful.
Can we take a step back?
Yeah, please.
When did? Because we had a strategic planning consultant, Diane Burby.
I was about to lift Diane.
Okay,
with the Aspire.
I'm trying to think when it was that we were able to, bring her on, and that at that time Kata had enough money so that we could actually pay a strategic planning consultant to help us through all this planning.
Well, I know you had worked with her prior, very early on, but by around, I think it was 2014 or 15, when I was going to organize with you for the 2016 at OSF, we did a meeting in LA with Diane. But so that was in the work.
And I remember meeting in Minneapolis.
We all met in Ashland, I think, with Diane, right?
Yes, but even before that.
Yeah, I think we did. So she was really, it's quite rare that I think in the field that one strategic planning consultant actually journeys with an organization from its vision and founding to its most recent strategic plan, which is the case with Diane Burby. And she helped us actually decide, which was not an easy decision, for us to shift from being a national steering committee to becoming a 501c3 organization and officially founding a board. And so many of the national steering committee members became board members once we had collectively made that decision.
No, let me just correct you, Andrea.
Yeah.
The incorporation and the legal name and the nonprofit status was granted in 2007 with the New York State.
That's the National Asian American Theater Festival?
Yes, but that is still the legal name of Kata and the banking name of Kata, isn't it?
Yes, I
Yes,
it
believe
is. That's
so.
correct.
Yeah.
yes, okay. So, and while we're talking about finance and origins, I really want to shout out to Jorge Ortol and the original board, the founding board members, and all the boards since then, how much you have contributed. Jorge and I were co-treasurers until maybe 4 years ago. Well, I was on the board until about 2 years ago. So I just think that the board, you should all really get kudos for the extraordinary work, because as you say, no one is paid and everything and all the ideas and energy. But Jorge really did because he managed all the books, and I believe we were the recipient of all the early grants from Doris Duke. So Doris Duke Charitable Trust really should get a big bow. We're
Yes.
very, I think that what is now Kata is really, we're so grateful.
Yeah, I also want to mention there was, you're correct, the incorporation was that early and was under the name of the festival. But I believe it was under the fiscal sponsorship of the New York organizations for quite some time, including NATCO. NATCO was the fiscal sponsor, I think, right before we shifted to a 501c3.
I don't think it was it was the three of us. We three signed, I believe. Mai was probably, if anything, Jorge was a very hands-on treasurer. I know that he presented all the fiscal notes and budgets in the early years. I can't remember I don't know about fiscal sponsorship. I know that the three companies, Mai, NATCO, PanAsian, were the ones that applied for that nonprofit. I believe our names are still on there as the whatever.
So Teresa, so you're saying that the funds were funneled through the three different organizations until the incorporation happened.
Well,
Is that right?
the incorporation was first, and
Yeah.
then the nonprofit came later. The 501c3 came later.
Right. I mean, it's much the same way when East West Players hosted the Next Big Bang, the monies came and they were filtered through East West Players because
Correct.
yeah.
501c3.
Right.
No,
That's
I
right.
think that the incorporation and the was and being able to receive funds all happened at the same time, right after the festival. The first grant for the festival from JP Morgan was given to PanAsian, and PanAsian invited you all.
Gotcha. So, and about what time, I just want to uplift, did Jeff Mousseau come on? Because Jeff became our general manager, and I feel like we want to include some of those names, right? That really kind of kept the inner working.
Right.
Well, you all were
Absolutely.
producing working board, doing the artistic aspects as well. When did Jeff come on?
Jeff was also the first recipient of the Honorary Asian Award at the
That's right.
National Festival in OSF. Yes, because of his years of service to Kata as a general manager, and he did so much work on the logistics to make the conferences and festivals happen.
Yeah, we had the 2016, as we mentioned, Organ Shakes. Then 2018 was another one of those interesting models where, like I was mentioning, Che Yu was at Victory Gardens at that time, and we also partnered with the DePaul University Theater Department and held a lot of the conference breakouts there. That's when the Hawaiian delegation was invited. Haile Opua, Dr. Haile Opua Baker, also our board member, gave the keynote, and we had the No Aloha Poke protests. So there was just a lot of community organizing, continued activism. And then, of course, in 2020, COVID hit and we went toward virtual programming. But in those, I know when I came on that 2014, 15 through before COVID, I believe we were established as a nonprofit by that point. Yeah.
Yes, we were. Yes.
Okay.
And I want to lift up that that was a major shift in 2018. really intentional inclusion of a Hawaii delegation,
Yes.
and how that led to a shift in more Pacific Islanders and Native Hawaiians being included in again, that another moment of expanding who do we include in the notion of Asian America now, and which continues to be a complex conversation, right, about Native Indigenous identity and its relationship to Asian immigration in the Americas. But that moment of coming together and supporting the protests really built relationship and built trust, which eventually led to the Confest in Hawaii.
That's right. And we had planned, I think by the time, like we often do, by the end of one of the conference festivals, by that point, Confest, we wanted to be able to announce the next location. And I believe with that delegation, which is also where Tim and I had one of our early convenings of different leaders for building this sort of ad hoc BIPOC coalition, sharing funders, helping each other with resources for sustainability. By the end of all that, that conference, Hawaii was inviting us to come there for the next Confest, to University of Manoa, University of Hawaii Manoa, where Dr. Haleapua has the Hanakeaka Theater Group within their larger, theater department. So we have just about 15 minutes left, and I want to make sure we hear from each of you around what you think for our future leaders. But before that, can we move to just our founding board members, a bit about Kata, how we went to the Consortium of Asian American Theaters Artists, that history of shifting to what we called Kata, and again, those board members, and how that supported further transformation. You started onto that a bit too, Andrea, already.
Yeah, thank you for naming that, because as Tim said, we started as a coalition of organizations, but when we started really articulating the vision of what we wanted Kata to be as a national organization, we had to recognize how many individual artists there are in the field who don't have access necessarily to organizations, and wanted to start to think about, let's make an organization that is built to serve both organizations and artists, hence Consortium of Asian American Artists and Theaters. That was the moment when that shift really happened, to make sure we were including individual artists as well.
I'm recalling at the, I think it was the Chicago, it might have been Oregon Shakespeare in Chicago, that era, when we started to also have breakout sessions, so that if we had affinity groups, they didn't conflict. So folks who were of biracial or multiracial identities didn't have to choose that dilemma of, oh, I don't feel this enough, or now I have to choose, and I'm actually a complex, identity. So that was really transformative as well. Yeah, and the LGBT community as well, and much more so involved in being able to really look at our intersectionality of identity. Yeah. Anything else about Kata in general as you moved to that expansion? How it formed, what changes you noticed happened, or what felt important?
What are your goals now? You as president and Stephanie as vice president. Andre, you're still on the board. I think Mina's still on the
No,
Roger, you've been.
Actually, Mina and Natarajan and I have rotated off the board, and we're no longer board members, and we're just like cheerleaders in the field now for the Kata's future.
But Roger is still on, ever important secretary. Did you say, Andrea, that Kata has its own nonprofit incorporation now?
Yes, Kata is a 501c3 currently.
Okay, you mean separate from First National AA
No,
Festival?
no, it's still, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the National Asian American Theater Festival doing business as the Consortium of Asian American Theaters and Artists.
Okay, so it's still the First National AA Festival. Okay.
Yeah, Kayla says yes.
That's one. Okay, that simplifies things.
Yes. Yeah, Steph, do you want to answer Tisha's
Um,
question?
yeah, I actually just returned from the board to the board. I took 2025 off. I had technically termed out. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure happened before I initially had termed out was I spent 2024 helping with board recruitment. That was one thing that I was really interested in doing and put a lot of time and effort into because we had so many a lot of our founding board members retired. Andrea, I think you retired also at that time. And so, we were looking at bringing in and rebuilding the board, and so I was really pleased that uh, with support from the board members, we were able to bring on a lot of new people to bring more regional diversity, especially I think to the Kata board. So I know for my kind of first 9 years on the board, that's what I did a lot of. And then I took my break, and this year, I'm back. I'm still, I think, trying to figure out what my goals and priorities are as the new vice president. I just stepped into that role like in the beginning of February. But I am very much excited to see what CASA can do as we move more into our role as a national service organization. Now that we have Kayla as our executive director and staff, for me, Kata was very much about helping me see outside of my little producing bubble, right? I It helped introduce me to different artists nationwide, different theater leaders nationwide. And that is one thing that I'm still very much interested in is to see how Kata can help people make connections with each other so that we can continue our advocacy, continue our art making. Um, because I know that we're in Los Angeles, uh, and even though there are a lot of Asian Americans in Los Angeles, there is not that much Asian American theater. It is really East West players and artists at play, and other theater companies are starting to do more work written by and featuring Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. But I think that the ecosystem is still small, and so it Kata really helped us make broader connections. And I want to make sure that that continues for artists in throughout the nation, to be able to see that there is support and that there are artists and that our challenges aren't we have shared challenges, and then we can have shared solutions as we do the work that we do.
Thank
I'd
you.
love to, before we move on, lift up a couple of things. One is that I think it can't be overstated the impact and challenges of the pandemic time,
Right. Thank
right?
you.
Because one of the reasons that some of us founders were on the board for so long, probably past our term limits, was because of the pandemic. And so the intention was after 2018 to do the Hawaii convening in 2020, which of course became impossible, and programming became virtual, and there's a tremendous learning curve about all of that. And it took us and the field a long time to come back to large scale convenings post pandemic in a way that people could feel safe, especially in Hawaii, which was a particularly vulnerable location, right?
Yeah.
And so, and we took our time to do that, and we stayed committed to the commitments we had made pre-pandemic to make sure that that particular convening was supported when it was the right time to happen, and the conversations about being in right relationship and right timing and right process were very, very important, and I think a tremendous learning moment for Kata as a national organization. But the other thing that kind of can't be understated is the challenges and tension around when to be activist and when to focus on the art making and what the relationship between those two things is. And how leadership of the board changes over time, the composition of the board, who's on it, what's happening in the world, how we're responding, how we're feeling called to step up. All of those things influence what is the role of a service organization, particularly for BIPOC communities now, right? And that hasn't always been easy on the Kata board, but I want to lift it up because we were so different, with so many different identities, so many different value systems as artists and organizations, so many different inclinations about what is Asian American theater, what do we mean by theater, what's our relationship to activism, do we want to speak out, or do we want to, like, stay under the radar? Like, all of those tensions were always present in a really, really positive way. One of the things that I always felt inspired by the Kata board and proud of was our ability to navigate those tensions in a productive way that always came back to being about how do we serve a nation of artists as diverse as we are. And I think that's one of the things that service organizations of color definitely struggle with. Not all service organizations on our field do well. And Kata always navigated that conversation and that healthy tension in a beautiful way that made it possible, as you said earlier, Leslie, very ambitious, but to do it all with significantly, like, less systemic support than historically white institutions and networks have. And so I'm just going to make a call out to the funders in our field right now to say, I think that this panel and discussion is really, really highlights why this is important, why network building is important, why service organizations and field building is important, and convenings are important, because as Stephanie said, too many of us feel isolated too much of the time. And we need our funding partners to continue to invest in that future in the way that they invested in our founding.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Andrea. You read my mind.
Can I just add about connections? I just wonder if I can do a shout out to Snail, Desai, and Randy, who were so instrumental, again, in the trajectory and spiral of Kata and all the festivals and convenings. And are we in touch with them? Because I think perhaps Kata can benefit, again, by also staying in touch and in association with some of the past leaders.
Victor, Mayag, Victor, Snehal, Randy, we do stay in touch. Yes, thank you for that. Beautiful. And you did read my mind, because during COVID, here we are in this health crisis, and then Atlantic, it'd be hard to say, but Atlanta shootings happened. And so we came together nationally and with the Asian American performers, group in New York as well. And we were able to have incredible programming over Zoom, and with Asian Pacific Islander psychologists that helped us through those traumatic times, and with upstander bystander training where families could come on Zoom, because a lot of our elders were finding they were being targeted just out on the street. How do we support getting skills building? And then we eventually were able to have a virtual showcase, because we had slated many artists to perform in Hawaii, and that wasn't going to happen. So we could still pay them, highlight their work. And to your point, Andrea, thank you for lifting this up. We were able to carry those learnings forward about decolonizing, and what does it mean to plan the next one when we're thinking about our dear colleagues, our community members in the Twin Cities. What kind of healing and service do we need to be able to bring together for the state violence that is currently going on Turtle Island here in the U.S.? So how do we look at those who are vulnerable with their own, as we're getting profiled racially around their status in this country, of citizenship or citizenry, as immigrants, many as refugees? So these are complex times, dangerous times for many of us, unsafe times. How can we continue to be of service? And we do need that support to serve our communities. With that, with our final amount of time, because I want to make sure you all have maybe a minute or so, maybe 2 minutes each. The final question, looking at this complex, this challenging time we're in right now, this particular time in our country and in the world with war and all these things happening. Our final question for each of you to have a turn to answer, what do you see as the future for Kata, and what would you maybe protect or make sure folks hold on to? Is there something you feel they should continue to hold in these foundings, these learnings? And then what might they feel free to reinvent? Yeah, we know evolution of things is going to happen. We're creative, it's going to evolve. So what nuggets should they hang on to? Maybe Kayla and team and all of us still very active in the field, many of us, but the other artists and theaters, what might they feel free to reinvent? Anyone want to jump in?
I'll go first.
Okay, cool.
If that, go ahead, Eric.
Okay. For me, this session really has created for me the sense of it's kind of Kata, I feel like, is kind of at a point where there's a kind of a call out or a challenge to the next generation of leaders, in a sense, in that I'm now at the age where I'm involved in a number of legacy projects. That may be good or bad, but and one of them is a festival in Vancouver that I was a part of the first 5 years. And next year it's going to have its 50th anniversary. But what's so impressive to me is that they're now in like their third or fourth generation of leaders. And a couple of years ago, I went back to the festival, and I was amazed at several things. One is how well organized it was, way better organized than when we started. Two, it was much larger than we ever had it before. And three, there was this tremendous social justice element to it, that they were very conscious of the community they're in. They're very conscious of working with the people of that community that where the Japanese Canadian community, in a sense, has not been in that area for a while, but they really, when they come in, they really have decided to be there on a year-round basis and to really work with the local community. So I've just been impressed by that sort of generational leadership transition. And even at MOO, I left 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now, and we've been through now 3 new leaders. We're into our 3rd new leader. And so it's really like I see now, everyone used to fear founder syndrome or sort of leadership transition. But I actually now, looking back, say leadership transition is a great thing. It's a great opportunity for people to come forward, for the generation behind you to come forward and really assert their sort of vision and their kind of leadership. And so I sort of feel like now is the time, like as people like Andrea, I always said I'm one of the first people in and one of the first people out, kind of thing. And but gradually over the last 10 years, that transition of leadership is happening. But now we're kind of at a critical point where that next thrust of leadership, we want to really encourage and call out to them to say, here's a grand opportunity for you.
Right, and to Rick's point, I mean, just having Stephanie here, who started off as an intern at East West Players, and to see that, she is also one of the co-founders of Artists at Play now, and hearing that Fran DeLeon, who started at East West Players in a show back in the 1990s, is now artistic director of Theater Moo. So again, seeing that connection is really important. And speaking of connection, I felt like when I had first talked to a number of theaters prior to the beginning of a conference, many of those artists that I visited in San Francisco and in New York and just felt like they didn't have a home, an artistic home. many of the South Asian artists didn't feel like a place like East West Players was inviting to them because, like how Andrea said, it was, primarily East Asian. And, that kind of like hit me, on the head, like, you know what, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And so that's when this whole notion of home became so important. And how can we connect everyone nationally, right? And eventually we had people coming from London and Singapore coming to our conference as well. So that was really important. So I'd like to see how this next generation continues that idea of connection, but for what purpose? I mean, it could still be about finding a home, but things are just so much more complex these days. And, what would be the reason that Kata would help bring all these people together? What would be that connecting idea? I remember when I think it was Andrea and Gail Issa did something on the first day of Next Big Bang, which was mapping, wasn't it mapping? And how we were all connected and we used like the entire theater, the audience and stage, and how we were all connected somehow, whatever the mission that was stated, we were all connected and we were all having a great time, and somehow that just brought us together and was really a nice way to start the conference.
Well, with America democracy on the brink and America sending out very divided signals, and I would say that connecting with the international artists is a very prudent way to go. I remember we did talk about inviting international artists, so maybe that is a prong that can be explored more. I think that all of us are now working in an environment of uncertainty, and with signals coming out of Washington, D.C., it is very disheartening sometimes. But that spiral keeps going up.
Yes. Thank you, Tisa. Beautiful. Yeah, Andrea.
The Asian American community has so much history on this land and knows so much about the way the United States government moves and how to survive.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is vitally important in this moment, and thank you for naming that, Tisa, when our very democracy, which has always been imperfect in this land, but still is at stake, that we connect each other's histories and movements and knowledge across communities, that we make connections between the Chinese Exclusion Act and the travel bans that are happening now, between what they used to call the internment camps and what they call detention centers now, which are both forms of concentration camps.
That's right.
Literally, by definition, right? That we, the Asian American community, has always known how to navigate the xenophobia of this nation, the United States. And now one of the primary targets is the Latinx community. In Minneapolis specifically, it's been the Somali community, right? If we are not talking to each other, if we are not building coalitions, Kata began but with a coalitional impulse within the notion of Asian America, right? And what is the role of Asian American artists in the 21st century? So that needs to continue to be grounded and solid and expand even within our own notions of what is Asia or Asian Americanness. And at the same time, we have to be building coalition with other communities of color and other immigrant communities and communities that are being targeted, and globally. I totally agree with you, Tisa, that those, and we are now positioned because of the internet, because of what we learned through the pandemic, to make those global connections and sustain them in new ways through technology, right? So I think the challenge for Kata in the future is really multifaceted, right? Of how to continue to gather and convene and build our own community while increasing our connection to other communities, both on this land and, of course, our indigenous communities and supporting them as well on this land and globally and internationally.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Andrea. Stephanie, I know you have just about a minute or so.
Yeah,
Anything you want to add, please?
I just wanted to kind of take what everybody said and really kind of uplift the great work that our staff is doing, Kayla, Sarah, and Kevin, in terms of helping create those tools and those opportunities and those programs for us to make those connections, to be a service organization, to open up membership to allies, and to share, the resources that we have, right? Like to come from a place of abundance and to know that all of us contributing together and working together is how we can meet the goals and face the challenges that we all have as we move forward, in society as it is now with all the challenges that we have now. So yeah, I think our staff has been amazing, and I look forward to continuing the work with them and the board and all of you as former board members, founding board members, as we continue in our field.
Well, thank you, Steph. Well, this is my opportunity too to say thank you to you as panelists. I've got to witness how you stayed on the board, rolled off, came back so that you could see us through to these 20 years, you all, 20th anniversary. Congratulations. You planted those seeds, you watered like mad, and it's really blossomed into this important organization. So my deepest gratitude for you taking the time today to talk about this history. Like I mentioned earlier, the founding was in phases. It wasn't just an overnight decision. It was quite an evolution. And now you leave us quite a legacy. So thank you so much. With that, I will pass the baton to Sarah and then Kayla, because I know they'll start to close us out for this wonderful session, y'all. Thank you so much. Yay.
You want us off?
If you don't mind, Tisa, thanks. Thank you so much to all of our panelists and to Leslie. Thank you for facilitating this conversation. And thank you so much to all of you for joining us for this conversation as well and watching. We would like to encourage all of you to become Kata members. With your memberships, you get access to our Circle page, which is the fastest way to learn about upcoming events or workshops and other opportunities to get involved. And members also get exclusive access to some programming and also access to our National Healthcare Benefits Program. Our next event is on April 20th, live streamed here on HowlRound. Kata Conversations Pathways Forward is going to be an intergenerational conversation between university students and people who've been in the field for a few years. So we hope you'll join us. And I'm going to pass it to Kayla to close us out.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you to our panelists, Leslie, our board members. Thank you all, our staff, Kevin. And thank you all for supporting us. So very excited for the future of Kata, and let's take forward the lessons, reflections, and commitments from tonight. Whether you're reaching across from the community, speaking up, listening, or just holding space for others, this work is ongoing and it's very collective. So thank you again for being part of this conversation. We look forward to building, dreaming, and creating together in the months and years ahead. Thank you all so much.